Something happened in your life that you walked away from without a second thought. It looked like nothing. It registered as just another moment in an ordinary day, a small act, a brief pause, a simple choice to respond to something that most people around you either did not notice or noticed and decided was not their concern. You did not deliberate over it for long. You did not weigh the cost extensively or consider the significance or have any sense that what you were doing in that moment was anything other than the ordinary human response to an ordinary human situation. You helped someone, and then you moved on. But divine eyes were watching, and what those eyes saw when they observed what you did in that moment set something in motion in the spiritual realm that has been unfolding ever since. Something that is building toward a manifestation in your visible, physical, everyday life that you are about to begin experiencing with increasing clarity. Something that started the moment you made that choice, and that has been growing in the unseen realm like a seed that was planted in good soil and given every condition necessary to produce an extraordinary harvest. That harvest is arriving now. But before we get to what is coming, heaven wants you to understand what actually happened. Because the moment that looked like nothing from your perspective looked like everything from the perspective of the realm that sent the one you helped. The ordinary seeming person you stopped for, the need that could have been so easily walked past, the situation that by every human measure was minor and forgettable, was none of those things in the spirit world. The one you helped was carrying a divine assignment. And in the moment when you chose to stop, to give, to be present, to respond with genuine care to a need that had no audience and no obvious return value, you did not just help a person. You participated in the completion of a heavenly mission. You became part of something that heaven had arranged specifically, deliberately, with your name on it before the day began. You did not know that. You could not have known that, but divine eyes knew, and they were watching every second of it. Let me tell you about divine watching, because it is not the watching of a distant observer, not the detached observation of a being who sees from far away and notes what happens without being personally affected by it. Divine watching is intimate. It is the watching of a parent who cannot take their eyes off a child they love, the watching of a craftsman who is invested in the work of their own hands, the watching of a God who made you specifically and sent you into this world with specific gifts and a specific calling, and who watches your life not with the clinical interest of an experimenter, but with the passionate, personal, cannot look away interest of someone who is deeply in love with the soul they are watching. When God watches you, it is not surveillance, it is devotion. And what God's devoted watching observed in that moment was something that caused a response in heaven that the spiritual realm rarely produces. Not just approval, not just satisfaction that a good thing was done, a response that the ancient texts describe as the response of a father who runs toward a returning child. That full body, full heart, full presence response of a God who was so moved by what was seen that the response came immediately and completely and without reservation. Heaven was moved by you specifically, by the choice you made in that specific moment, by the quality of heart that made the choice possible, by the entire story of formation and surviving and staying open and continuing to care that stood behind that choice and made it what it was. Heaven looked at all of it, the act and the person behind the act, and was moved. And when heaven moves, things change. The spiritual atmosphere around your life changed in that moment. The trajectory of what was coming toward you changed. The timing of certain blessings that were already prepared was accelerated. The doors that were already designated for you but not yet unlocked were unlocked. The favor that was already written over your name began to flow with a new intensity. The divine arrangement of people and circumstances and opportunities that constitutes the visible evidence of heaven's involvement in a human life was set into immediate and active motion. All of that started in the moment you made that ordinary-looking choice, and all of it is arriving now. God wants to speak to you about the kind of person it takes to make that choice. Because understanding what you demonstrated in that moment is important not as a way of making you proud of yourself, but as a way of helping you understand what heaven sees when it looks at you, what it has always seen. what has always been there beneath the ordinary surface of your daily human life. You have a gift that is more powerful than most people recognize as a gift. The gift of noticing. The specific, attentive, impossible to fully explain capacity to notice when something is wrong, when someone is struggling, when a need is present, even when the person carrying the need has done everything possible to make it invisible. You pick up on things that sail past most people without registering. You feel the weight in a room before anyone has said anything. You know when something is off in a person's voice, even when the words are perfectly composed. You see the person behind the presentation in a way that few people can. That gift was not a random distribution. It was placed in you intentionally for the specific purpose of making you capable of responding to needs that other people miss entirely. The one you helped in that moment was carrying a need that most people would not have noticed, but you noticed because you were made to notice. Because the gift of seeing was built into you as the essential equipment for the calling you were sent here to fulfill. The enemy has spent years trying to convince you that this gift is a burden, that the sensitivity that comes with it is a weakness, that feeling things deeply and noticing things that others miss makes your life harder than it needs to be, and that the solution is to work on closing down some of that sensitivity, to toughen up, to stop picking up so much, to build the kind of emotional and spiritual armor that would allow you to move through the world without being affected by everything you see and feel. Every season where giving went unreturned was an argument for closing down. Every time your sensitivity was used against you was an argument for armoring up. Every experience of caring more than the situation turned out to deserve was an argument for caring less the next time. But you did not close. You remained open. And the openness that survived every argument for closing is exactly what showed up in that moment when the divine appointment was arranged and the angel was waiting to see what you would do. You showed up open. You showed up seeing. You showed up with the full, unarmored, genuinely caring heart that everything in your hard history had tried to train you out of, and heaven saw it. There are things in your story that you have carried as marks of failure or weakness that heaven wants to reframe for you today. Things that, from your perspective, represent the places where you fell short or where life defeated you or where you simply could not hold it together the way you wanted to. Things you are not proud of. Things you would change if you could go back. Things that have sometimes been used by your own inner voice as evidence that you are less than what heaven says you are. Heaven wants to speak about those things differently today. The times you were broken were not failures of your faith. They were demonstrations of the depth of your humanity, a depth that the God who made you is not ashamed of, a depth that makes you real in ways that polished, unbroken people cannot be real, a depth that gives you access to the broken places in other people's lives because you have actually been in those places yourself and you know what they feel like from the inside rather than just from the outside looking in. The times you fell were not evidence of disqualification. They were evidence of the real conditions of a real life being lived in a real world. And the times you got back up were evidence of something that heaven values above an unbroken record. The resilience of a soul that will not stay down. That gets back up not because getting up is easy, but because staying down is not who you are. The times you gave more than you received were not mistakes in your accounting. They were deposits in a heavenly account that does not follow human accounting principles. The economy of heaven is not the economy of equal exchange. In the economy of heaven, the seed that is sown generously from a genuine heart grows at a rate that natural agriculture cannot predict or explain. What looked like giving more than you received was actually investing more than you knew you were investing. And the return on that investment is coming in a form and a measure that is going to reframe the entire story of the giving. You will look back at the seasons that felt most like loss and understand them as the most productive seasons of your life. Not because the pain was not real, not because the loss did not cost what it cost, but because what was built in you through those seasons is exactly what heaven needed built in order to use you the way heaven intends to use you in this next chapter. The hard things did not happen to you. They happened for you, and you are about to see the fore of it with a clarity that changes everything. Heaven wants to walk you through what the divine witnesses recorded when they observed your act, because there were multiple layers to what happened in that moment, and each layer carries its own significance and its own corresponding blessing that is now being released into your life. The first layer was the layer of sacrifice. What you gave in that moment cost you something. Not nothing, something real. Something that came from a supply that was not unlimited. Whether it was time you did not have to spare, energy that was already running low, resources that were needed elsewhere, attention that was being pulled in multiple other directions. Whatever the specific cost was, it was real. And you paid it without being asked to justify the payment or calculate whether the return would cover the cost. Heaven recorded the sacrifice, and the principle that governs sacrificial giving in the spiritual realm is among the most powerful principles in all of divine economy. What is given sacrificially from a genuine heart is not just replaced, it is multiplied. The supply that was drawn down by the giving is restored at a level that exceeds what existed before the giving happened. This is not a metaphor. It is the actual operating principle of a spiritual economy that human financial thinking cannot fully model. What you gave is coming back multiplied. The second layer was the layer of humility. There was nothing in your demeanor in that moment that suggested you were giving with an awareness of your own virtue. No performance of generosity, no subtle enjoyment of the identity of being a giving person. Just the simple, humble, direct response of a heart that saw a need and moved toward it without any additional agenda. The purity of the motivation in that moment was registered and valued in heaven as one of the clearest expressions of the heart God is most pleased with. The humility that characterized your giving is being honored now with the specific blessing that heaven reserves for the humble. Not just more of what the world considers success, but the deeper things, the things that actually satisfy, the things that fill the places inside a person that achievements and recognition and accumulation never reach, the things that are only available to souls that have not made themselves the center of the story. The third layer was the layer of faith. Because in a very real sense, giving without seeing, giving without knowing who you were giving to or what the act would ultimately mean, is an act of faith, a demonstration of a soul that is oriented toward goodness as a practice rather than as a strategy. A soul that gives not because of what giving will produce, but because giving is what love does, and love is what that soul is made of. That faith is being met today by the corresponding faithfulness of a God who does not overlook the acts of genuine faith that happen in the ordinary moments, who keeps perfect record of every small step of trust, and who responds to the accumulated record of a faithful life with the full weight of promised blessing. Michael wants to speak about the 5 specific shifts that are occurring in your life right now as the direct consequence of what divine eyes witnessed. 5 areas where the spiritual shift that started in that moment is translating into visible, tangible, real-world change that you are going to experience with increasing intensity in the coming weeks and months. The first shift is in your spiritual perception. The gift of seeing that made you capable of noticing the need in that moment is being sharpened and deepened and expanded in this season. The spiritual sight that has always been part of how you are wired is being upgraded. The things you pick up on are going to become more specific. The knowing that arrives without a clear logical source is going to become more reliable and more actionable. The discernment you carry is going to operate with a precision that is going to consistently amaze you. And the things you see and know through this heightened spiritual perception are going to serve you and the people around you in ways that become one of the most visible marks of the new season you are entering. The second shift is in your material provision. Heaven is releasing resources toward your life that are coming from directions you have not been watching, sources you did not plan for, opportunities that are arriving rather than being pursued. The financial atmosphere around your life is changing. The scarcity that has characterized certain seasons is being replaced by a sufficiency that has room to grow into abundance. The specific financial needs that have been most pressing are being addressed, not in the distant future, in this season, in ways that are going to feel specifically timed and specifically sized for exactly what you need at the exact moment you need it. The third shift is in your sense of purpose. The clarity about why you are here and what you are meant to be doing that has sometimes felt just out of reach is arriving. The fog that surrounded certain aspects of your calling is lifting. The next steps that have felt uncertain are becoming visible. The confirmation of direction that you have been waiting for is coming, not in a way that removes all uncertainty, because walking by faith will always involve some uncertainty by design, but in a way that gives you enough light for the next step, enough clarity to move, enough confirmation to trust the direction you are being called toward. The fourth shift is in your relationships. The loneliness that has been a feature of your experience, the specific quality of being surrounded by people without being genuinely known by them, is ending. The right connections, the ones that match your depth and your calling and your specific quality of heart, are arriving. Some through completely unexpected channels. Some through the deepening of connections that already exist but have not yet reached the level they are meant to reach. The experience of genuine community, of being truly known and truly valued and truly accompanied by people who are actually equipped to walk with you, is becoming available to you in this season. The fifth shift is in your joy. The deep, sustainable, circumstances-resistant joy that is the hallmark of a life fully aligned with its purpose and fully received in its love. The joy that does not require everything to be going well in order to be present. That coexists with hard things because it does not spring from circumstances but from something far more stable. The joy of being known, of being loved, of being used for something that matters, of being exactly who you were made to be in the exact season you were made to inhabit. That joy is rising in you now. You may already be feeling the first edges of it, the inexplicable lightness, the unexpected moments of gratitude that arrive without obvious cause. The sense of something good approaching even when the circumstances do not yet confirm it. That feeling is accurate. It is the spiritual perception of what is already in motion. The joy that is coming is not imaginary. It is real, and it is close, and it is going to deepen with each day of the new season. Part 2. Now heaven wants to speak about the angel's experience of what you did. Because the encounter was not one-directional. You affected the one you helped in ways that went beyond the immediate, visible dimension of the help itself. When an angelic being is sent into human experience in human form, they enter a dimension that is fundamentally different from the dimension they inhabit. The spiritual world and the physical world, while interpenetrating and inseparable in their deepest reality, feel different from the inside. The physical world is heavier, more limited, more subject to the experience of need and vulnerability that is the basic condition of human existence. And an angelic being in human form, however temporarily, experiences something of that weight. The one you helped was carrying the weight of human appearance. And in that weight, in the vulnerability of inhabiting a form that could be overlooked or dismissed or walked past, they experienced what it feels like to be in need in a world where need is not always met, where the ordinary human tendency towards self-focus means that genuine need can exist in plain sight without being seen. And then you saw them. You did not walk past. You did not do the quick assessment and decide the need was not your responsibility. You did not offer the minimum required by social convention and then move on. You stopped. You actually engaged. You gave something real. You treated the one in front of you not as an inconvenience, but as a person whose need was worth your genuine attention and response. For a being whose existence is defined by being in the presence of perfect love, experiencing the temporary absence of that love in human form, and then suddenly encountering it again through the hands and the heart of an ordinary human being, that was extraordinary. That was the mission completed in its fullest possible form. Not just the data of what you would do, the experience of what genuine human love actually feels like when it moves toward rather than away from need. The angel returned to heaven changed by the encounter, and the report they carried was not just information, it was testimony. The testimony of what it feels like to be on the receiving end of the love of a soul like yours. And that testimony moved through the heavenly realm and reached the throne of the God who made you. And God responded. Michael wants to address something directly, something that has been a point of spiritual warfare in your life for a long time. An area where the enemy has been most persistent because it is the area where your defeat would have the most significant consequences for the fulfillment of your calling. The enemy has been attacking your sense of worth. Not randomly, not because you happen to be in the path of general spiritual warfare. Specifically, deliberately, strategically, because the enemy understands what you are worth in the spiritual economy, because the enemy knows what you carry, because the enemy has calculated exactly what will happen in the lives of people you were sent to reach if you actually step into the fullness of your calling with the full knowledge of your value. And the enemy has concluded that preventing you from knowing your worth is the most effective available strategy for limiting your impact. So the attacks have been consistent, the whispers that you are not enough, the highlighting of every failure, the comparing of your insides to everyone else's outsides. The accumulation of experiences designed to confirm the lie that you are less than, the relationships that reinforce diminishment rather than dignity, the seasons of invisibility that suggested you were not worth seeing, the doors that closed in ways that were designed to communicate rejection of your very person rather than simply redirection by a God with a better plan. All of it was a strategy, and it was a strategy aimed at keeping you from receiving the truth of what heaven says about you. Because a chosen soul that does not know their worth cannot fully walk in their authority, cannot step fully into their calling, cannot occupy the spiritual territory they were designated to occupy, cannot be the presence in the world that they were sent to be. An unknown worth soul is a diminished soul, and a diminished soul is a contained threat. Heaven is breaking that strategy today. With the full authority of everything Michael carries, with the complete weight of divine declaration, with the specific evidence of what was witnessed when you helped the angel and what it revealed about the quality of soul you are, heaven is saying to you clearly and without ambiguity that you are worth everything. Not worth much, worth everything. The son or daughter of the living God, chosen before the foundations of the earth, bought with the highest possible price, invested in with the most sustained divine attention, loved with a love that cannot be earned or lost because it is not based on performance but on identity. That is your worth, not earned, given, not contingent, permanent. Receive it. Let it go all the way down. Let it displace the lies that have been living in the place where this truth belongs. Let the knowledge of your actual worth become the foundation from which everything else in your life is built and from which every decision and every step forward is made. Heaven wants to give you a specific word about the next season. Not vague spiritual encouragement that sounds good but does not help you navigate actual life. A specific, practical, actionable word about how to move into what is coming. The first word is this: show up. The opportunities that are coming require your presence, not your perfection, not your complete readiness, not the fully healed, fully formed, fully equipped version of yourself. Just you, as you currently are, showing up to the things that are placed in front of you with the same quality of heart that showed up in the moment when you helped the angel. That quality is your superpower, and it is more than enough for what is coming. The second word is this: receive. Practice opening your hands to receive what is coming, rather than unconsciously deflecting it back toward others before it lands. The season ahead requires you to receive as well as give, to let blessing touch you, to let love reach you, to let provision arrive without immediately redistributing it before you have actually taken it in. Receiving is not selfishness. In this season, it is obedience. The third word is this: trust the noticing. The gift of seeing that caused you to stop for the angel is going to continue directing your steps. When you notice something, when you feel the pull toward a person or a situation or an opportunity, trust that noticing. It is not coincidence. It is the same gift operating in the same way it has always operated. And in this new season, the noticing is calibrated at a higher level of sensitivity and reliability. When you feel it, move. The fourth word is this: speak. What you carry needs to be expressed. The things you have been learning and living and understanding through everything you have been through need to come out. Not in a polished platform, everything perfectly prepared way. In the ordinary, present, one person at a time way that is actually your strongest expression. Talk to the person in front of you. Say the thing that is on your heart. Offer the word that arrives when you are listening to someone. The voice that has been held back is needed now. Let it speak. As this message draws toward its close, Michael wants to leave you with one image. One picture that captures what heaven sees when it looks at your life from eternity's perspective. Heaven sees a river, not a stagnant pool, not a contained, managed, safely banked body of water. A river, moving, living. going somewhere with a purpose and a direction and a momentum that does not stop for obstacles but works around them or wears them down or is redirected by them into a new channel that ultimately reaches the same destination. A river that has sources deep in the mountains of everything that formed you, that has been fed by the rains of every season you have been through, that has carved its channel through the landscape of your life, not in spite of the hard terrain, but because of it. A river that is now, in this season, reaching the place where